Hello, and welcome to 6 Degrees from Cannabis. I'm your host, Tori Rarick, PharmD and holistic healer. Each episode features a candid conversation about how connecting with the cannabis plant has enhanced an individual's wellness journey. Here to honor the plant, talk about healing, and have fun. Hey everybody, welcome back to the 6 Degrees from Cannabis podcast. Obviously, I have to address the name change. This is what I'm calling season 2 of the podcast because I was having, as you know, a bit of an identity crisis with this podcast and the direction I wanted to take it. And, we're going in the same direction. We're heating up. And if I have something to add to the episode, extra tidbits, I will add it. And if I don't, I won't. But the reason for the name change is I thought that I was the first person ever to use cannabis, and I wasn't, shockingly. And also, the more I talk to people, I'm realizing that we all are connected through cannabis, the people that I feature on this podcast, but their stories are so much more than that. And cannabis is a way of enhancing the healing that you do, but it's not the only way. And so I love to address that cannabis is the main reason for connection and connecting with all of these amazing people featured on the show, but their lives are so much more than that, as I said. So it's a play on 6 Degrees from Kevin Bacon. I don't know, some of us are too young to know what that is, or if it's just lost on everyone, but I'm bringing it back. We're all 6 degrees from cannabis because really, truly, even if you're not a user yourself, at this point in the game, we're all talking about cannabis. We're talking about CBD. We're using hemp as alternative fabric and material. And if you're in the healthcare system, you probably have a patient that you've cared for who is curious about cannabis or using cannabis, and at this point it's just unavoidable. It's part of the story. It's part of a lot of people's stories. So hence, we are now calling this podcast 6 Degrees from Cannabis, and thanks for sticking with me. I have 3 episodes in the queue for you. Today's episode is with Sarah Woodson. She's incredible. This interview was an experience for me. She is something else. She is a wise woman. And unfortunately, the audio is not my best. I was learning how to use this new Snowball, and the connection just wasn't that great. I did my best on editing. Please let me know if it's horrible. Sarah's so flexible that I think that she wouldn't be opposed to re-recording or doing a part 2 or something like that. But just wanted to give you that heads up. If you're able to just stick with it, she has so many gems of knowledge to share and of true wisdom. So again, thanks for sticking around. Let's get to the show. Hey everyone, welcome back. Tonight I'm speaking with Sarah Woodson. She comes from a long line of entrepreneurs. She is owner and founder of Kush Canvases, and she currently serves as the Legal Redress Chair for NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. She serves on the Denver African American Commission, and she's also a consultant for a marijuana industry group. Sarah.
Hi.
Did I get it?
Yes, that was wonderful. Thank you for that great introduction, and thank you for having me on your platform tonight.
Oh, I'm really stoked to talk to you. I'm gushing a little bit, but I want to, you're doing so many amazing things, and you have done so many amazing things, and I want to rewind and take it back and hear about your first encounter with cannabis.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're the first person to ask me that question.
What?
So my very first encounter with cannabis was actually in high school. I used a little bit in high school, but it's never really been my thing. That was my first encounter with cannabis. And so I had friends that smoked, and, I just made it all work to my benefit.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So you had friends around you. Was it something that was heavily present in your life, at least the people around you? Or was it?
No, not at all. Because, I grew up with my mother, and rest her soul, she was an African woman. And so it was a strict household. I could do things, but I knew that like coming home like high, or having weed on my person, or, hanging out past a certain time, it wasn't going to be allowed. And then I just never had seen my mom smoke or drink the whole entire time I known her. So my whole life, I never witnessed her smoke or drink. So I didn't necessarily grow up around cannabis, but I knew people that smoked, and I knew people that had it available. So no, I wasn't around. I didn't grow up directly around cannabis, but I went to Eagle Crest High School, and when I got there, it was a complete culture shock. And a lot of people were into smoking weed. And so it was just like, oh, okay, you smoke weed. I know where to get weed. And so that's pretty much it.
In that particular upbringing, was it sort of equivalent to alcohol? Was it not a bigger deal than alcohol?
So my father is actually an alcoholic. So alcohol was just bad. Cannabis, which in my mom's culture, they call it Martha, Mona, Peter Pan. I know, it's so funny. It wasn't looked at as such a bad thing. The stigma was not as bad in my household around cannabis as it was around alcohol.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to fill in the gaps from then to now, you received two paralegal certificates and associates of general studies, and then you attended CU Denver to pursue a bachelor's in sociology with a minor in legal studies, and you ran with that. You founded one of the largest pro-se bankruptcy and divorce companies in the state of Colorado. And as the CEO of that company, you created an equity program for women of color to start their own legal pro se businesses. So you are so socially focused, and it's so impressive. And so how did that season of life prepare you for where you're at now?
That is a great question. So when I initially thought about being a cannapreneur or a ganjapreneur, I didn't even really think about creating opportunities for women from an equity lens, specifically women of color. But once I got into cannabis and I saw that that was needed, it just was a perfect fit. It organically went in my wheelhouse. I'm diplomatic enough, and I have the skill set and the experience to do it. And of course, like, I'm passionate about it. I want to see it done so bad. So that's how it prepared me for what I'm doing now.
So, yeah, I love to ask my guests, what was your call to honor the cannabis plant? And obviously, you took what you learned and founded Kush Canvases. But like, what was that decision like? And you went such an interesting way with the hospitality.
Yeah, so that was a really hard decision because I started that business at 25 with $1,500, and I grew it to over six figures. And so in my immediate family, of course, I'm the most successful, I'm doing the best. And now when I'm right at my height, my apex, I start saying, well, I don't want to do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I would tell the people that I trust the most as far as opinion wise, which is my aunt, um, and my father, the other had already passed by 2014. They were like, that's crazy. You're going to leave your successful bankruptcy business and go be a part of like dope industry. Like, this is what they would say. And I was like, I see an opportunity though, but I know that my mother, she was an entrepreneur and she was my biggest supporter. And even though she wasn't here, I could just feel her saying, go ahead and do it. And so once I made the decision, I kind of just looked online. I made a decision, looked online to see, what was out there in the landscape. And there was one other company out there. And so I was like, oh my God, this just makes sense. And immediately I just went into like the business basics 101, registering your business, doing all the pieces of it, and the business was birthed. And it's still a baby. It's still well, it's not infant. It's like a little toddler.
Taking off though. Yeah. Wow. Six
Yeah.
figures. I mean, hello. So
Hmm.
yeah, deciding to do that, did that come to you right away? The Kush Canvases idea? Had you been to some of these wine-centered painting parties?
No, but I always wanted to go. So literally, I was talking to my husband, and because initially when we became legal on recreational and medical first, then recreational, he always wanted to be a part, but he couldn't because he wasn't eligible based on a past marijuana conviction. So he really wanted to be a part. He could be a part. And that was, always an internal battle for him and for me. And so when I decided that I was going to go that route, I was like, well, if I smoked weed, what would I like to do? And, he's like, oh, here you go. I'm like, well, I would like to smoke and paint. Like, it was just like that, literally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he was like, I think that sounds like a good idea. I was like, yeah, you know how they sip and paint? Imagine if you have a room full of people smoking and painting. It wasn't too much thought. It was like a seed was planted and I couldn't turn away.
That's so cool. So are you a painter anyhow?
No. And I think
Wow.
that's the misconception. I think it's a full business. We usually have 2 to 3 painters in rotation.
Wow.
So it's a full scale operation, and now we're focusing on really working to get licensed on the city and state level and going from private to public. That's the goal.
Wow. That's so
Yeah.
amazing. So, I guess what I'm wondering is how is this experience different than a sip and paint, other than the obvious two different substances? But, what do people say when they come to yours, or what's the atmosphere like?
Well, I think the timing, well, there's a lot of things. So the timing is right. Cannabis tourism is a hot topic. It's a hot experience. And of course, people want to come here to experience it because we're the first. And then when people come in, they do not get what they expect. So I think the expectation is they're going to walk into this place and it's going to feel like a basement type situation. But we're really focused on an upscale experience. And, I tell the staff, like, all right, it's time. Let's get prepared. Let's make sure these people walk out of here and this is something that they can remember for the rest of their life, like as a cannabis experience. Now, as the years go by, it may no longer be a novelty once hospitality and we're legal. Once consumption is legal and sales are legal federally, but by then the hope is that we've scaled the business across the United States through some type of franchise model. But when people walk in there, they are totally impressed. From the moment they walk in to the moment they walk out. Our artist actually walks them through step by step on painting a picture. We have a host that walks around. We play trivia. We do music requests. If it's someone's birthday, we do group activities. We tell corny jokes. And then, of course, we do. And it's usually me telling some corny joke. And if they don't laugh, I'm like, all right, tough crowd. I told that
We
one
need to smoke a
before.
little more. I don't know.
Exactly. And so they're just totally blown away. And then we have art on display. We have had some amazing artists and we own all the artwork. So we have art on display. So usually when they walk in, I'm like, oh, look at that. Oh my God. Oh, is that what we're painting? So that's the first thing. The second piece, as far as like the atmosphere, people have a perception that people smoke the same way they drink. So what we've seen after servicing about 3,000 people is that people will roll up, they'll smoke a little, they'll put it out, and now they're totally focused on painting. then we'll take a break. They'll smoke a little more. But a lot of the times it can be very quiet. So that's up to us to make sure that we're setting a good environment, and we're keeping some high energy going in there, no pun intended, but it can get really quiet and people are totally focused. And then every now and then you have like the one real loud, crazy hype person, probably, who knows what they did before they got there, so it's just, you never know how it's going to be, because there's always variables, but for the most part, it's laid back, it's chill. Art and cannabis are just an amazing marriage. They really, really are. And when I walk around and I look and I think about how big this can be, it continues to motivate me. I'm like, look at this. Look at Kush Canvases.
So amazing.
So yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Do you supply the cannabis?
No, excuse me. We do not supply cannabis at this point in the game. It's always bring your own. Throughout the last couple of years, we've been connected with dispensaries and they can get deep discounts, but we're so excited about House Bill 2030, which is the marijuana hospitality bill that has passed. We're, of course, waiting for the city of Denver to opt in. Upon doing that, we're going to apply for that license, and that license will allow us to sell micro sales. So that's only going to make the experience for the customer better, more convenient. Of course, it's going to add an additional revenue stream to our business model, so that's going to be nice as well. So we can't sell what a dispensary can sell, but we can sell. I think that the final rules, I think the outcome was great. What we can sell is pretty much exactly what a person needs to have a good experience like that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Love that. And something that we haven't even touched on, like this is so robust, I could spend probably an hour talking just about Kush Canvases, but there's so much more to your story. I'd love to just talk about how 5% of the profits from each Kush Canvas ticket supports cage-free cannabis. Can you talk about that a little more? Why that organization, how you came to that decision?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started to really understand the landscape of cannabis and who participates in it, and who's benefiting the most, I decided that instead of complaining about what was happening or what wasn't, that was the whole goal, was to add some kind of corporate social responsibility program to Kush Canvases, even though we're a very small business, and we don't have profits shooting out of the roof. But I'm like, well, I believe in profit with purpose. So I'm like, well, if I can start giving back at this level, I know that in the end, that's only going to be a benefit to me. And so I just went searching, and just as, my life has always been, you're the student and you're looking for the teacher, and boom. And then I bumped into Rosalie Flores, which is now like my absolute best girlfriend. And so she was is the lead organizer of National Expungement Week for cage-free cannabis. And she connected me with them, and we decided to go that route. And just because I have a legal background, I thought it would be best suited in expungement efforts.
Yeah, that's so tangible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that as we grow, and as we progress, I definitely plan on Kush Canvases being some type of model that a social equity applicant can go for. Wouldn't it be nice to have like multiple Kush Canvases with social equity applicants and social equity candidates that are, a part of management and day-to-day operations? So, and with all that, making sure that we're definitely giving back. So for me, like, if I was a millionaire, I would be like a super duper philanthropist, because I'm just, it's so funny. The thing that excites me the most about getting rich is giving back.
Totally.
Yeah, that is the one thing that excites me. I'm like, we're going to do this drive. We're going to do
And
this. We're
that
going to
is
do
such
that,
like the spirit of cannabis, like 100% abundance, giving.
Yeah, giving. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So just to bring the audience up to speed, because even as a person of color, I really wasn't tuned in to the inequality until I joined the industry. So Marijuana Business Daily published some data in 2017 that Blacks own less than 4% of the companies created, in comparison to 81% of cannabis businesses owned by whites. So what Sarah's speaking of are, again, these tangible ways to provide jobs and close this gap on disparity that the war on drugs really opened up. And representation is obviously one huge route to gaining this social equity. I pulled a quote from your personal Facebook.
Oh,
So
gosh.
let
Okay.
me know if we can keep this in here. But I think it's really important, and I want to share it here and just give you the platform to expand on it even more if you'd like to. So
Okay.
here we go. Quote, everyone that I know that was effective in selling cannabis prior to state legalization is smart, has the business acumen, leadership qualities, and were good at what they did. Every single one of them have not been able to participate because of a prior cannabis conviction, end quote. I want to give you the floor on this. I just think they're such powerful words and a strong invitation to view people who are selling cannabis before it was legal in another light. They are smart, they're savvy.
Yes. So this conversation is very difficult, and I try to always look at things from both ends. And sometimes for me personally, because I'm a business person, I'm not looking, sometimes I cannot see the full spectrum. But what I will say is that when you have this title and it's a social equity candidate, right? And I think that's a reason why that it's so difficult to figure out exactly what a social equity candidate is. But for me, it's always going to be someone that was negatively impacted by the war on drugs. And can you imagine? I was reading an article, and it was basically saying like Anheuser-Busch survived prohibition. Like, they were selling alcohol and they survived prohibition, and then they got to be legal. But that has not happened for some of these people. And so a social equity candidate isn't like an uneducated, impoverished drug dealer, criminal that couldn't run a business and couldn't, get the finances together and couldn't do accounting if you paid him. It's just a regular person that could have possibly had a conviction, wanted to participate, and boom, you're out. Now, the big huge discussion is, well, was this done on purpose and was it not done on purpose? For me, I will tell you honestly, it just doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that we focus all our effort and our energy to legislative changes to make sure that people can participate. So that's what I mean. I sometimes I hear conversations and people think like social equity means like these people are horribly poor and broke and destituted. Well, I've been negatively affected by the war on drugs. So, that could make me a social equity candidate if that's the case. And I'm far from poor, broke, and destituted. So I just want to make sure that people understand a huge piece of how people show up is economics. And there's all type of people, especially in our culture. You have, and in every culture, and that's what I'm finding out too, like people are people, and a lot of the times how they show up is based on their background, especially their socioeconomic background. So for me, if there's ever an opportunity or a chance to even the playing field when it comes to people of color, I feel like making sure that we have some representation, because we're not going to get a lot. But if we at least have a little bit more, like for instance, in the city of Denver, if we had 3 more marijuana retail stores, and outside of myself, 4 social consumption spaces and 5 delivery, right? That would have increased it by like literally 1,000%. because at this point we can only identify about 5 owners through retail cultivation. So that's no one in delivery, and then myself in hospitality. So I just want people to know, like, you know, people need opportunities, and economic opportunities to me are the most important.
I love that. You're so solution oriented, and just what you were saying earlier, like we can talk in circles all day about the injustice, but like let's do something. So that leads me to some of your other current positions. In addition to owning and running Kush Canvases, you serve as the Legal Redress Chair for NAACP, the Denver Chapter, as I mentioned, and serve on the DAAC. So what are your conversations with these organizations like? Are they pretty cannabis heavy at this time, or what other initiatives do these groups focus on?
So, of course, NAACP is, you know, civil rights, justice, advocacy for people of color. So where I come in is literally like I view everything from the cannabis landscape. So being in the Denver branch, I've been able to have some public forums and public meetings. I've been able to have a little more reach, and NAACP will continue to support equity in the city of Denver and in the state. And so being there gives me a platform to push this agenda, and then also to continue to support the NAACP in my role as legal redress. And that's like reading a lot of legal inquiries, directing people to where they need to go. We cannot give legal advice, but we can definitely give them, you know, starters and help them. And for me, like, you know, I make sure that I take my time, I respond to everyone. So just, and sometimes people just need to talk to someone. And who better to tell the story? Like, well, you know what? I called the NAACP today and I got through and I spoke with them and they gave me information. That's the hope that people need. So that position, that's what I do in that position. On the Denver African American Commission, that position is to, the commissioners are there to bridge the gap between the needs of the community. And once you figure out what those needs are, you then bridge that gap to the mayor's office. And so, of course, my scope is cannabis there as well. But the Denver African American Commission also has a beautiful economic summit, which in 2019, it was held at Cross Purpose, which is in Denver off Richard Allen Court. They also focus on this year an equity lens. A lot of, there was a HPV grant that we were a part of doing to make sure that women are receiving that vaccine and no one's dying from cervical cancer. So a lot of community work and recommendations directly back to the mayor. And then, of course, my specific skill set is business and cannabis.
Totally. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what about people who aren't of color and they want to be allies and advocates? You know, this is something I talk about a lot on this podcast, is there are all of these groups, but like going to the Capitol and speaking with, you know, the mayor and our local politicians, it can be really intimidating. So how do people jump in? And also particularly non-people of color?
Well, here's the thing, you know, and there will be people that will disagree with me, but I figured out a long time you can't please everybody. I do not think that we should determine social equity based on color. I really do not. I feel like when it comes to this specific thing about social equity, it should be based on people negatively affected by the war on drugs. Example, have you lived in an area that had a high crime rate or an opportunity zone? Do you, your spouse, your mother, father, brother, sister have been arrested for cannabis or have a cannabis conviction? And then does your income exceed a certain amount? To me, those are great qualifications. And if you fall in there, you fall in there, because there's been all kind of people affected by the war on drugs. It just happens to be that African American communities were affected the worst. But to me, it's like, there's no purpose of having to say, well, let's make sure that African Americans are the people that receive these licenses. Because when you put those kind of criteria out there,
Mm-hmm.
the people that were affected will come regardless of their color. Now, people have totally disagreed with me on this, but I stand by this. A social equity candidate should be based on, have you been negatively affected by whatever criterias? And I do not believe that race should be a criteria. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think that people have got to be open and honest and be able to have real conversation when it just comes to race relations in our country. And just, to me, that's like the first portion of it, because like I said, I've met all kind of people, and there's white people that act a certain way, and there's Black people that act a certain way, as far as like character, your character. And you can see people that have good character and poor character and sneaky character in all races. Some of my best friends in cannabis do not look like me. And that's totally fine, but we have things in common. And so I feel like, you have to be honest, and you have to be open, and you have to be real. If you truly do not believe that social equity should exist, then there's no point in you being an ally, because that will eventually come to the light by your behavior or by how you're treating people, regardless of your race. If on the other end, let's say if you're an African American and you're just doing it to benefit yourself, or you're doing it, to collect money and sponsorship, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. So I've just realized in 2019, especially in our industry, is that there's a lack of transparency, and there's a lack of honesty, really. And I feel like a lot of that is based on the business aspect of it all, So if you want to get involved, you come and join the NAACP. The NAACP was founded by Jewish and Black people. If you want to come to the Denver African American Commission, our meetings are the first Wednesday of every month from, I think, 3 to 5 at the library on Welton Street. You're welcome to pop by. I just feel like race is just such a difficult subject in the United States of America, and that's because no one's having real conversations about what took place and about how we fix those disparities. But I feel like cannabis is a place we can do that.
Totally. So many thoughts on what you just said. First of all, thank you for that very candid invitation to everyone. I really appreciate that. And it's obviously, again, you walking the talk. And it's just so important what you said on all levels for us to discontinue seeing separation. And that's where the race conversation leads a lot of times. So I think that's so refreshing to hear you really redefine equity and not make it a matter of race.
I'm just going to be honest with you. I just want to get the work done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I don't have to have the credit. I don't need the credit. I feel like, my legacy is my credit, like not being in the media and being on, and I'm of course I love that I'm on your podcast, but people serve for validation, as opposed to serving for the service of helping people. Like, I can easily run my Kush Canvases, apply for my consumption license, be fine, and never look back. But what about all the people that really don't understand the landscape of cannabis? And cannabis is a beast. Like, it's not an easy business. Like, there's always regulatory changes. I mean, I still have a learning curve, and I have a legal background. So, there's constant change and growth. And so running a business is hard, but let alone a cannabis business, like, you better have some allies and you better be prepared. And so, like, I cannot at this point just do my own thing and ride a wave and, be the first African-American one with a social consumption license and call it a day. Like, for me, that doesn't matter. Now, if I've helped like 10 people get in the industry, that to me matters. Yeah.
Yeah, and to just round out what you said, like if we can do this in any industry, it's cannabis, because there is such a strong community. And if we're breaking down these barriers like this, oh my gosh, just meeting you, all the people I've met through cannabis, and it's so unified, it's so beautiful, it's so diverse. Cannabis is touching everyone right now. We met
It
at a
is.
sensitivity event.
It is. And you know what else? That's the one thing. I was speaking at some event, and they were asking like, well, how do you find more diversity in cannabis, and or how do you find more? I'm like, well, first of all, you show more. I will tell you, like, we have specific, because we keep analytics of everything, so we can see where people are coming from. Now we have specific states and regions where people come from, but every single class is diverse.
Mm.
There's Black folks, there's white folks, there's Hispanic folks. I would say that the lowest participation that we have would be from Asians, but there'll be a little bit of everyone in the class. And we try to play all kind of music. I mean, the
Mhm.
classes are really good. You have to get out and check one out one of these days.
For sure. No, for sure. And it's not even just that. When I'm on the website, like you are doing all the hospitality. It is the experience. You're cooking, what else do you have going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to really create a well-rounded experience. So this year in 2019, upon receiving our license, we're going to have a food and beverage license. So we're going to be doing like, healthy CBD infused smoothies and giving people the opportunity to come and sit and eat. We plan on launching a bud tender package. A lot of the times it's hard to get locals in, but we know that our bud tenders are basically our gateway to the communities and to tourists and all that. So we want to make sure that we are giving them special discounts and giving them a place to call home. And so we want to really pay homage with our bud tender package. So that will be launched.
You have hip hop classes?
Yes, so we're yeah, we're gonna be launching like dance classes. So I was kind of back and forth, like, well, do I want to do yoga, because I already have some people. There's people in the space that do that very well that I respect,
Mm-hmm.
and so I felt like, well, why not be innovative and create another way to go about
I'm in love with
social
you.
use. Yeah, while dancing. So we have puff and pastries, and then of course we have sushi and spliff. And those are pretty much the classes that we offer. Oh, the last class that we're planning on doing is Homegrown 101. And that's really going to be nice for tourists, because they're going to be able to come in and just learn the basics of, growing cannabis. And the person that's hosting that class, they are like a total master grower, very passionate about cannabis. So it's going to be nice. And once we get licensed, I'm just so excited. I feel like we have the first sustainable model, and we really want to be the example of what hospitality looks like in the space.
It's amazing. I'm so thoroughly impressed. You are so cool.
Well,
Thank you for
thanks.
everything.
I try to be. Actually, I don't. I'm kind of corny at times. I think that we met at a Tokativity event.
Yeah.
Yes, so that night, and oh, that's how I ended up reaching out to you, because
Yes.
Moon Mother Hemp. Yes, I love that hemp. I smoked a little bit of that night, and I was like, oh, this is not bad at all. I'm a lightweight, but this is gonna work.
No,
So
that's
yeah,
exactly, it's just mellow mood, you know?
yep, it's perfect. Yeah, and that's about the best. That's about the most you're gonna get out of me. But yeah, good
Okay.
hemp. Yeah, that was a good
I
night.
respect that. Yeah, I'm so glad we met. What are your favorite cannabis resources? Maybe you have something legal in particular, anything you'd point newbies to, or anybody.
Yes, yes, yes. I absolutely love the MED website, Marijuana Enforcement Division website. I would say that if you're first of all, if you're gonna be in cannabis and you're going to participate from a business aspect, regardless especially if you're a social equity candidate, you need to be very well versed in what's going on. And like I said, it's not easy. So you're going to have to take some time. You're going to have to read through some bills. You're going to have to look for bulletins. But I always recommend people start at the MED.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Mm-hmm.
And you've already mentioned a couple times, but let's say it loud and clear at the end here. Where can the audience follow you, and where can they keep up with upcoming events?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I should be prepared for that next time. I'm like, I sent you the links, girl. Okay.
You did.
So of course our website, www.420artclass.com. Facebook is just Kush and Canvases. So KUSHAND CANVASES. And then the same with Instagram, Kush and Canvases. And then we have a Twitter, but I'm not really good at Twitter at this point. So I'm working on getting some social media people in to help me a little bit better with that.
Anything else you'd like to share?
No, nothing that I like to share, but I would like to say, congratulations to you and everything that you're doing. I do follow you on IG, and I love that you're really going through a personal development journey and that you're sharing that with people, and which makes you have to put that in practice every day. I will tell you, like, I love personal development. It single-handedly changed my life. And I remember thinking, like, I don't need to read this kind of book and I don't need to do that. That's crazy. But the moment that I was tapped in, tuned on, tuned on, I don't know if you know Abraham Hicks, but
I'm an Abrahamster.
yes, I already knew. I could totally tell. Like, when you start getting down and going down that journey, like when you come out of that whole thing, like you are so ready and prepared, and you have such a better understanding of people and the world. So I'm just congratulations to you for everything that you're doing and the fact that you're sharing it. I love your Instagrams.
Oh.
I love them.
Thank you for seeing me. Same thing. I'm seeing what you're saying every day. You're so inspirational. Just these words we've had tonight, and just seeing you grind and doing it for the glory of your own heart and your legacy. Damn. You go, Sarah.
Thank you. I've been grinding all my life. Rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle, which I do love Nipsey Hussle.
Shout out Nipsey.
I know. They're going to be like, who's Nipsey Hussle?
Right? That's your homework. Look up Nipsey Hussle. Okay. Thank you so much, and have a great night.
You too. Blessings.
Thank you so much for tuning in to 6 Degrees from Cannabis. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. You can find more information about holistic healing and what I do by visiting toryrarick.com. Find me on Instagram at YourGuideTori and connect with me through direct message anytime. Peace out.